I hope you're getting to see me now. I want to just do this real quick. We are brought to, or my show is brought to you by, Civil Rights Agenda at 2129 Northwestern Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, and the phone is 773-235-8852. So if you're in the Chicagoland area and you need some help or information, these are good people to turn to and go to and ask your questions and get whatever help you need, okay? All right, so back to me. I just finished the last show, and what I talked about for the most part, if some of you saw the end of it, I'll go back over it. But we may not have a show in November due to Thanksgiving or December for Christmas. We'll see how that goes. If there is a show, then I will certainly announce it on Facebook. Okay? And I think most of you know how to find me on Facebook. I'm Jackie McKethan. That's McKethen. And Jackie is Jackie. So, what I talked about on the first show, because I did one at 6 o'clock, now I'm doing it again at 6:30 because the person that has the 6:30 show called in, said he couldn't make it. Congressman Danny Davis, I hope. I've met him. He's been on my show before. He's a really nice guy. You should tune in at 6:30 every Friday. Well, I don't know if he's on weekly or monthly, but he's on at 6:30 the third Friday of the month. And he's somebody that you really should listen to. Okay? So what I talked about, and I'm not going to read the whole article like I did at 6 o'clock, just so you all know that our show is saved on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and see previous shows. Okay? Again, it would be a CAN TV. You go to YouTube, but then you look for CAN TV's LGBTQ show. It's on the bottom of the screen. Okay, CAN TV. And I invite anybody to call that wants to get into this conversation, because, as I said in the last airing that we just did at 6 o'clock, this is about the things that upset us as LGBTs in the fact that people don't understand what it's all about, okay? And you have people out there making ridiculous comments and really treating LGBTs badly. In the Chicago Tribune on September 20th, Ask Amy, same as Dear Abby or whatever, Ask Amy had somebody write in about a situation. And the situation, quite frankly, was Mom wrote in, and she is disturbed by her husband, and in the end asked Dear Amy if she should leave him or not. It appears that their son has come out as non-binary and using they and them pronouns. And the wife says, although she is struggling with the change, she is still trying to understand it, and honestly trying to, get a hold on what's going on. Now, I've talked about this stuff before. Of course, if it were me, my first reaction would be slightly different than what dear Amy was. But her husband evidently flat out told them, mom and his son, that he just doesn't care if they identify, or I'm sorry, he flat out told them he doesn't care if they identify differently. He will continue to use their birth name, pronouns, etc. Okay? So the husband flat out denies and discards the child's feelings and beliefs, which is rejection. Okay? And that's what it all boils down to, is this child is going to suffer from rejection, confusion, because mom is trying to understand it, where dad hasn't nothing to do with the situation. The mom even told her husband that the child may refuse to interact with the husband or his dad if he refuses to address them in this new way. But again, the dad said he didn't care. So again, that is just flat rejection, and that's not going to lead to any good endings. We already know that type of situation from the parents does cause both homelessness and suicide. And 60% of the LGBT community accounts for 60% of the LGBT community accounts for homelessness and suicides. Now, he says, she says, the mom, based on previous discussions, I believe my child will keep in touch with me, but not my husband. Well, of course. Would you want to talk to anybody that rejects you and puts you down? So on and so forth. But I always said I would leave my husband if he showed hate towards a child of mine, and this situation is confusing because this isn't rejection, it's just not really acceptance. Well, I disagree with that. It is rejection. Total rejection. And so I don't agree with the fact that it's just not really acceptance. And then she says, should she leave her husband? Amy says, I'm going to dodge the direct question regarding whether you should leave your husband or not, because it is too binary, and marriage, like gender and sexuality, occurs across a spectrum. However, you say that he is not rejecting your child, but is just not accepting them. You see his response as a partial acceptance. I see it differently. When someone says, this is who I am, this is my name, this is my identity, and another person responds, no, it isn't, that is the definition of rejection. Okay? So, she agrees with me that this is rejection. I have spoken often about the need for any young LGBTQ person, LGBTQIA person, to get their parents involved in a therapeutic session with a therapist that understands the phenomena behind the brain's activity, which is what generally controls all of our feelings, reactions, actions, etc. So if the brain identifies differently than the physiological makeup, it's the brain is going to have more say-so, or is going to continue to feel that way, irregardless of how you're put together. Okay. You don't need a log cabin set to make a log cabin. You can go out and you can get sticks and so on and so forth. You can't change the face of the brain and what it does. You can't do that. Back in the old days, they thought shock treatment would cure it, and it didn't. It just made the person crazy instead of LGBT. So she stays away from that subject. But she does explain many people in your generation, he's talking to the mom now, many people in your generation would freely admit to struggling adjusting to non-binary gender and they/them pronouns. I think it's natural to be thrown off when a child who you have raised with one identity announces such a change. But accepting someone's right to define their own personhood and identity is what it means to love somebody. So while addressing your child differently might be hard at first, accepting them should be easy. And that's right. I mean, one person marries another, and if they want a happy life, they're going to have to adjust to some differences and be prepared to accept, okay, Dad doesn't like to walk the dog, so what are you going to do about it? Well, probably have the child do it or the mom do it or whatever. Point being that there has to be some differences that have to be accepted. And in this case, you've got a stubborn male that just flat refuses to accept anything other than his ideas, which is why I've always said before, as I've said before, when a person starts wondering about how to identify, they really need to get a therapist involved and let the therapist, because most LGBTs don't know initially why they feel the way they do. Okay? And a therapist will work wonders with that person, but also can explain why that happens. Okay? The other thing I talked a little bit about, I'm going to just cruise over this because this time is running out too. We all know about J.K. Rowling, the writer for Harry Potter, and her garbage outlook on LGBTs. She doesn't agree with it. Well, there's a comedian, his name is Dave Chappelle, who is also pushing back against LGBTs. And Netflix is defending, because that's where his show is, it's called The Closer. Netflix is defending his latest comedy special, The Closer. Critics, particularly in the LGBT community and their allies, want it taken down, charging his offbeat and often off-color monologue being transphobic. For him, that means plunging boldly into three areas that we tend to be the most nervous about discussing, which is sex, race, and politics. For example, he defends Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, who has been accused of transphobia for her criticism of what she calls the new trans activism. Okay, so she's non-accepting, and Dave Chappelle is obviously non-accepting. He doesn't believe it, that it can happen or should happen or will happen. But then on the other hand, He did redeem himself a little bit as he began to close the show out with memories of a friend and fellow comedian Daphne Dorman, who was a transgender woman that he became friends with and had an open conversation about identity. Sadly, Chappelle concluded the story by recounting how Dorman took her own life in 2019, shortly after defending him online. "I don't know what the trans community did for her," that's a quote, "but I don't care because I feel like she wasn't their tribe." And that's a quote. "She was mine. She was a comedian in her soul." There's lots of people that think they're comedians. There's lots of people that are comedians, but that doesn't give them the right to judge other people. Okay? My simple conclusion on this is, hey, if you don't want to be LGBTQIA, then that's your choice. But what somebody else is not anybody else's choice. And that's the bottom line. And that's what infuriates me about some of these people that get on and they don't want to know the science. It's just like the COVID and the vaccine. They don't want to know the science. They're going to make up their own mind what they're going to do or not do. And like COVID, they're killing people. Well, without acceptance, understanding, nurturing, as in the case of the parents of the kid, that kid could at some point decide this isn't worth the argument, and that's what leads to either the homelessness or the suicide or both. I can't stay here and live with Dad because he doesn't want to understand, doesn't even want to talk about it or hear any information about it. And there's people like Chappelle and Rowling out there putting hate and poison in people's minds about something that we know is absolutely controlled by the brain. But there's people out there that are going to be like that. And I see on Facebook a lot of people, especially new people that come out as LGBT, a lot of people that come out and say, well, I don't know how to deal with this. Well, that's why I have this show and why I try to put information out there that people can use so that they can understand or know what they can do about it. Just like the Civil Rights Agenda. They have some place you can call if you're being harassed or whatever the case may be, or you're having a legal problem, whatever. There's all kinds of LGBT, I hate to call them clubs. They're not really clubs, but they're organizations that will help people and help them. And then there's a lot of therapists out there that are becoming more and more aware of the science and are helping LGBTs. So the help is out there. The problem is the parents don't want anything to do with it, or the relatives or whoever is giving an LGBT a hard time. We have to do better at getting information, especially the scientific information, out there so people understand. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to suddenly quit refuting what science says, just like COVID and the vaccine. You see people giving interviews from the hospital on their dying breath saying, I wish I'd have gotten the COVID shot. That doesn't seem to strike a chord with a lot of those that are resistant to it. So we have to know there's people out there that are just not fond of being corrected. And now, my show is usually on the third Friday of the month, and from now on it's going to be at 6 o'clock. I don't know, I have to look at the calendar along with the folks here at CAN TV. If the third Friday is after Thanksgiving or right around that time, then perhaps we can have a show at a different date and time. Also, just to let you know that we will be setting it up, and I will give you instructions at the next show, so that if you want to watch the show by Zoom, there is a link, and I'm going to get the link, and we will set it up so that you can, the only thing I ask, if we do Zoom, if you have a question or comment, don't make it too long, because there's other people that may want to do the same thing, and so we want to get to everybody as best possible. Okay, so and I am on Facebook, Jackie McKethan, McKethen, Jackie. I am on Facebook, and I will put out more information on how to use Zoom. Okay, but until next time, which will be announced on Facebook, I continually do that. I put out information about the show on Facebook. Until then, I'm going to say goodbye once again, and I hope everybody will tune in. And if you have, you can even send me something on Facebook if there's something you would like to talk about, okay, during the show. That would be perfectly fine. If there's something specifically you would like to talk, then send me a message on Facebook, and I will incorporate that into the show. I usually get stuff from the news or the newspapers, what have you. But if there's anything any of you would like to talk about, by all means, let me know. That's what this show is here for. It's a forum. Okay? So until next time, this is Jackie signing off. And we'll talk to you later. I'll let you know when the next show is and how we're going to do it. Okay? Okay. Bye-bye.